Hello, welcome to another video, and this time we're looking at the GAIT functional movement pattern. And to enhance that, the very first thing you're going to need to ensure you've got is foot stability. So this is some very simple drills. If you look carefully at what's going on, Melissa here is working on the foot stability of her right foot. All right, and basically this first drill, she's just basically trying to get her toes to spread apart. All right, so she's trying to improve the width of their foot, especially the big toe, so it's really trying to move out wide. Once she's got that, then she's trying to make sure she has dorsiflexion of the big toe. So that's where the big toe lifts up just like she did then. Very important to the GAIT pattern for that to happen. If there's any issues with the big toe, you're going to have huge troubles generating good stability. So once you have that down, so obviously we'll do both sides, try to spread the toes first, try to get that dorsiflexion of the big toe. Once you've got that, the next thing you want to move to is learning how to control the stance face in the walking pattern. So this is where you want to set yourself up as if you're in that split stance. So you can see how she's in this almost like frozen point in time, and really this is where you're trying to focus on this foot. All right, and what you want to do here is again try to spread those toes, get that big toe to push down onto the floor, and also just behind the little toe. So not really at the end of the little toe, just sort of around about there with the big toe, and then on the heel. So you want those 3 points to be really pushing down quite hard on the floor. The wider this part is, the better it is for you. All right, so this is an exercise in its own, even though it doesn't look like much. You're just basically just trying to generate good foot stability, and this is where you'll stop overpronation, so where the foot flattens out, and you'll end up being able to keep your arch in your foot, so that when you land in your foot strike, that it controls the alignment of the lower legs here, right? So then you keep this nice alignment through the hip and the knee and the ankle, so you don't get any of these problems that we see usually with knee and hip issues coming from collapsing feet that are falling inward all the time, and also poor balance. All right, so this is just preparing you for the harder things to come. So once you've got that sort of stance down pat, you've got the foot really working, and there you go, you can see how she's really widened her toes out, and that's an exercise for foot stability. All right, once you've sort of got that down pat, then you can try to gradually progress it and move into a point where you actually lift that back leg off the ground, like so, as if you're in like a stationary walking stance. So you just take it back and having the arms moving in combination with it, with the main focus being to try and to keep that tripod position that we had before. And you don't want the toes trying to squeeze themselves together. They've got to try and stay spread apart. So you can see how she's just reset again and then come up and hold that point there. All right, so that'll be your first lot of exercises of foot stability in a very simple fashion. And then everything you've done here you want to try and do with all of the other exercises to come. All right, so let's look at the next one. All right, now just a basic stretch we would want to probably include, possibly could have included an ankle stretch in this as well, but just to try and keep it to, to be honest, I really could have found 50 or 60 exercises to help you here, but often see a lot of hip problems become a real issue for the GAIT pattern. So if we've got the foot stability already ticked off, then we want to make sure we've got good hip mobility. If there's any issues through that, we're going to see it come up when we try to do a lot of the leg things, and you're going to have to compensate around the stiffness in the hip. So this is just the very basic 90-90 stretch. So you've got the front leg in 90-degree angle and the back leg at a 90-degree angle, and then just trying to bend forward ever so slightly so you feel a bit of a stretch through the glutes and the hip region. And again, you do that on both sides, holding for about 30 seconds or so. So very, very simple. So once you've got that, you can come back to your standing position, and this is where you can just practice standing on single leg. Probably best to do this without shoes on. And you can see here, it's quite a simple drill. All you have to do is stand still. And it seems so easy when there's nothing wrong. All right, but when there's something wrong within the system, the proprioception, and you'll see Melissa's a little bit more unsteady on her left side now, because she has issues on that left hip, and you can see how she loses the balance quite quickly. The reactions of the core, the ankle and the hips, how she keeps falling inward, they're just not quite fast enough to position her, and the mistakes are actually what's helping her. All right, so quite a simple drill. Should be able to maintain this single leg stance with eyes shut for at least 30 seconds. That'd be what you'd be aiming for. Once you've got that down pat, then you can move to the next one. Now I'm going to show you a couple of videos with an older guy who's 80 years of age in these videos, because these very much relate to falls. So the gait pattern, obviously very linked to older adults or people with severe injury or even disease, where it's affecting their ability to walk. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so this next one's quite an interesting exercise. So this is what we call an inline lunge or a stability lunge. So I almost probably could have included this in the lunge video that we did last time. I've saved it for this gait movement because it really does predict falls quite well. So obviously stiffness in the hips of the lunge become an issue, but very much more reflex stability. And you can see here Laurie, who's completing this, what he's trying to do is get his front leg to be right in line with the back leg. All right, that's what we call it, an inline lunge. So he's basically narrowing his stance. The more narrow you are, the more unstable you are. And this is where there's a reflex stability of the core trying to prevent him moving in the frontal plane. So your stiffness in the hips are going to create compensation where they fall out to the right. This is where we see in ACL injury things we call shoulder sway, and it's a horrible place for the body to be positioned in, and it's where you see awful injuries at the knee and the hip. All right, so there's usually three levels to this exercise. First level would be hands by the side. Second level, hands on the head. Third level, hands on the head with the eyes shut. Again, really predicting falls with the older adults. That's why I've got Laurie in this video to show you what it looks like when an older adult does this. He's actually quite good. A lot of them can't actually get off the ground. All right, so that's the inline lunge. So excellent for the gait pattern. Really going to straighten any sort of deviations we might see in the things to come, especially single leg stance where we're going to load it. All right, so let's look at that. All right, so now we're moving into the single leg stance, and this is the toe touch drill, which I've featured many times in videos before. And basically this is a multi-directional single leg stability drill. And you see Laurie's trying to basically tap around the circle here, but at no point is he want to lose his alignment of his stance leg. All right, so he's trying to maintain perfect alignment here, but at the same time try to get as far away as he can. So his leg that's tapping the floor, he really needs great hip mobility here. Any stiffness in the hip means he's restricted in being able to reach further. The other thing that will restrict him is his poor stability either at the foot or the hip on this leg. All right, so you can see this is the stance leg in gait, and this is the swinging leg. All right, and then he's moving in multiple directions, so around the circle. So these backward ones that he's moving into now are really going to be like the ones where you're propelling yourself forward. This is where you're really working glutes and that quite hard. So they're the moving forward type of muscles, and the front part of the circle is more the downward, like walking down hills or downstairs, and more quadricep loaded when he's doing the front ones. But you can see when he's moving around here, there's a big load through the glute doing these ones where he's coming around him. All right, these are called a bowler squat. So he demonstrates pretty good technique on this. All right, this is an excellent drill for improving the stance phase of the gait. All right, and then that's usually where we see the injuries and the weaknesses occur. All right, so moving forward from just being on the floor with our simple drill so far, this is by far the hardest one we've seen yet. And you can see how he's now trying to work through these front ones. And they're quite awkward to try and prevent that from happening. All right, so that's our toe touch drill. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so this next drill is what we call the line drill. Quite a simple drill. There's usually 5 levels, and what I'm doing is I'm going to start on the level 3, which is the first 2 levels would be actually walking almost like abnormally wide. So there, that'll be level 1. Level 2 would be pretty much normal walking, where your feet are walking through the lines. I'm starting Melissa on level 3, where we're walking on like a tightrope. So very much like we saw the stability lunge or the inline lunge before. Once we narrow that stance, we really enhance stability, or we demand more stability through the stance leg. So for a person with no injury or no fall problem, extremely simple, no difficulty at all. But a person with the stance phase has a real problem with it. This can be very, very challenging, even quite scary for that person. They just can't control that walking in this position. Their stance leg is really affected. All right, so this would be like level 3, and the 2 harder levels when we walk with it really demanding even further time of the stance leg to stay stable. So now we cross the line and we walk across it. So that leg that's going to plant here, that has to stay very stable for a much longer, because this leg's got to come all the way around to there. All right, so the glutes, the foot on this stance leg, are really got to work hard, as does the core, a bit like what we saw that inline lunge before. If you have any compensation and you're falling out to the side, that shoulder sway is going to be a huge problem, and that's when you're going to fall and have that sort of reflex reaction to try and save yourself from splitting your head open. All right, so this is a great exercise to improve the stance phase again of the walking, and the faster you do it, the more efficient it becomes. All right, but obviously if there's a problem, people slow things down, because if they went too fast, they would fall really bad, disastrously. But going slow actually makes it worse. All right, so that's an excellent drill you can use that leads into the next one. Okay, so now we're at the point where we're loading up the GAIT stance. All right, so this is where we've got the farmer's walk handles. Quite simple with two arms. Like there's really actually sort of stabilizes you quite well. But what you want to do is really maintain a great posture during this. Grip strength becomes a big problem, which is sort of separate in many ways to the GAIT pattern. But this really enhances the strength part of the GAIT. So we're sort of moving away from falls prediction now, and really strengthening it in a huge way. So again, the glutes and any hip stiffness, you start to really see it come up in these loaded things. You may not have seen it with some people yet, but it will start to come up when we apply load to it. If there's a weakness there, it just really exposes it. It has nowhere to go. All right, so and it will happen more so on this next one, which will be the suitcase carry. All right, so farmer's walk is 2 handles. Really, to get the most out of that, you want to walk for a fair distance, probably about 40 metres. So we didn't really go far enough then. We probably need about 20 metres. So now when we go the suitcase carry, where it's only a single hand hold, this is where we start to see big issues. And I've done many videos on this recently, where foot stability again could be a huge problem, as could the hip. This is where you see Melissa's stance leg on the right side is her stronger leg, her right leg. So when she's in this phase here where that left leg's the one swinging and the right leg's the one on the ground, she controls it really well, and there's no sort of deviation where she'll swing around. Looks really, really smooth. Right? It's when it's on the other side, when she moves to the right hand, which means the left leg's going to be exposed when it's in that stance phase, is where we see things start to develop, where her hip is an issue. All right, so she picks it up reasonably well. It'll be when she's really walking in that point there, she has to control that load trying to pull her over. All right, it's a great exercise for anyone with problems in the walking pattern with one leg. All right, you can see her rocking around a little bit on this. A bit hard to see because it's a bit dark, but this is an excellent way to really enhance the GAIT pattern. All right, and then that sets us up for the next one. Okay, so next on the list is the walking lunge. So obviously it's a lunge movement pattern, but because of its unique ability to mimic the stance phase with having a swing leg and then a stability leg as well, obviously sort of anything that you can get out of on this will really enhance any running, walking, because the load is significantly greater obviously in this position. By lowering down, there's a tremendous amount of force being put through that whole front leg there, and the trailing leg as well requires a good degree of hip mobility. So so very much the glutes controlling all of the frontal plane, the quads decelerating so that you don't fall forward, and the opposite leg having that mobility component. So obviously there's a stack of different versions of lunges. I could actually bring in like backward lunges as well if I wanted to. Again, we could also add in load, as Dylan's about to show here, but anything that I can improve through this movement pattern makes walking seem significantly makes it seem insignificant really, because it's so much easier to handle than this. All right, so that's a very simple way to enhance the gait pattern as such. Let's look at a couple of faster moving things instead. Okay, so this time we're looking at something much faster, and this is a lateral bound. So even though we're not moving forward and we're moving laterally as the name suggests, the rules of gait are still very much applicable here. You can really see my arm swing. The arm swing is crucial here for me to generate the power. All of the stance leg phase problems that we've seen earlier are also the same things required now. So what we saw with the toe touch drill, you can almost see this looks like I am doing a toe touch drill here, but controlling that perfect alignment with ankle, knee, hip, no shoulder sway, and then this time, because this is different to everything we've seen so far, is that this athletic arm position. So the arm's really becoming a huge factor here. And obviously because I'm moving so much faster, there's a massive amount of strength requirements. You can see how far back my trailing arm is cocked back here, because it really has to swing forward incredibly quickly. And my glutes and everything now, as much as they're decelerating to brake, they're about to also provide propulsion to jump out that way. So as opposed to the walking lunge where I had dumbbells and it was quite slow, now the load is speed. So this is very much a power movement. All right, so again, if you spend time with this one, really makes the gait stance once again very insignificant, and just walking and even running to some extent is a lot easier for you. All right, so let's look at the last one, which is going to be running. Okay, so this is running, which we have had walking with the line drill and all those various things. So obviously the simple progression of walking is running, and it's such a complicated pattern to break down. But see here, this is like a sprinting pattern here, and you can really see the arm swing heavily involved. And we'll begin to see is when she gets closer is how important the feet are in controlling and resisting the shock. If I just take it back again, and you'll see here as you start to look for any excessive pronation, any poor alignment, things that we would have seen before with the toe touch drill, overstriding, where there's a big heel strike, which you don't want. She pulls through quite well, almost looks like she's going to heel strike, but then really quickly snaps that hip back and gets that right underneath her. See her stance phase right underneath. That's exactly what you want, where a poor landing, where they're just landing very much a big heel strike. That's horrible running technique. Very good use of the arms here, so you can really see as it's coming through, really swinging through, and that's a great example of a good sprint. And look at that big heel lift there on the leg when it's coming through. So that's where she can really get that speed and power. So the stance phase really breaking down to swing, and that good heel lift there with good arm swing. So there's a good example of a nice running technique. If you can run well, then walking's no brainer. All right. So obviously I would rather spend time with sprinting than distance running. Sprinting's more about much more precise, and getting more out of very much more hip mobility, huge amount of strength and power obviously, but it really enhances everything you want with the technique of the running, as opposed to getting sloppy with just trying to run for time and running with all four techniques is what we often see with distance running, especially amateur level. All right, so there's our gait movement pattern.